Imagine you drop a glass. It falls, hits the floor, and shatters into 100 pieces. Now, imagine watching a video of this event in reverse. The shards of glass leap off the floor, reassemble perfectly in midair, and land gently in your hand, whole once more. It looks wrong. It feels impossible. But why? Why can we remember the past but not the future? Why does time seem to be a one-way street, always moving forward, never back? This isn't just a simple observation. It is one of the deepest and most stubborn mysteries in all of science. It's a question that ties together the birth of the universe, the nature of memory, and the very meaning of our existence. Because when we look at the fundamental laws that govern reality, something very strange appears. It turns out, for the most part, they don't care about the direction of time at all. To understand this, we need to step into the world of physics. Think of a simple interaction, like two billiard balls colliding on a table. One strikes the other, and they both fly off in new directions. If you were to record this and play it backwards, it would look perfectly normal. The two balls would converge, strike each other, and roll back to their original positions. You couldn't definitively say whether you were watching the event forwards or backwards. The physics works both ways. This isn't just true for billiard balls. The most powerful laws we have for describing the universe, from Newton's laws of motion that chart the course of planets, to Einstein's theory of relativity that describes the warping of space-time by gravity, are all time-symmetric. Their equations run just as smoothly backwards as they do forwards. In the pristine mathematical world of fundamental physics, there is no special now, no inherent difference between past and future. The universe, according to these rules, should be like a movie that can be played in either direction. But what if our experience is telling us the truth, and the equations are missing something? Humanity experiences time as an arrow, flying in a single, determined direction. We are born, we live, and we age. A star is born from a cloud of gas. It burns for billions of years, and it eventually dies. An acorn grows into an oak tree. The oak tree never shrinks back into an acorn. This unwavering universal forward march is what physicists call the arrow of time. If the fundamental laws are reversible, where does this irreversible arrow come from? It turns out, the clue isn't found in the laws of motion or gravity, but in a different, equally fundamental law of the universe, the second law of thermodynamics. And to understand it, we need to talk about mess. Imagine your bedroom. You can spend an hour carefully organizing it. You put every book on the shelf, alphabetized. You fold every piece of clothing and put it in a specific drawer. You align the pencils on your desk. This is a state of high order. In physics, this is called low entropy. There are very few ways for a room to be perfectly neat. Now, imagine you just live in that room for a week. You toss a book on the bed, leave clothes on a chair, drop a pen on the floor. The room naturally becomes messy. This is a state of high disorder, or high entropy. The crucial thing is this: there are a nearly infinite number of ways for a room to be messy, but only a few ways for it to be perfectly neat. The second law of thermodynamics states that any isolated system, like the universe itself, will always tend to move from a state of lower entropy to a state of higher entropy. Order naturally gives way to disorder. Neat rooms become messy. Hot coffee cools to room temperature as its heat energy disperses. The universe, as a whole, is always getting messier. This is the key. The shattered glass is a state of high entropy. The atoms that made up the glass are now in a more disordered arrangement than when they were locked into the ordered, crystalline structure of the glass. There are countless ways for those atoms to be scattered as shards, but only one way for them to be a perfectly formed glass. The universe, following the path of statistical probability, moves toward the state that has the most possible arrangements. It moves toward the mess. So, when we watch the shards of glass reassemble themselves, we are watching a system spontaneously go from high entropy to low entropy. It's not strictly impossible, just so mind-bogglingly improbable that it would be like every air molecule in your room suddenly deciding to gather in one corner, leaving you in a vacuum. You would have to wait trillions upon trillions of times the age of the universe to ever see it happen. In short, the arrow of time is, essentially, the arrow of entropy. We experience time moving forward because the universe is on an irreversible journey from order to disorder. This, however, raises an even deeper question. If the universe is constantly getting messier, that must mean it started out in a state of incredible, almost perfect order. And all evidence suggests that it did. Our universe began 13.8 billion years ago with the Big Bang. At that moment, all the energy and all the matter in the entire observable universe was packed into a point of unimaginable density and temperature. This was a state of extraordinarily low entropy. Think of it like a perfectly wound-up clock. Since the Big Bang, that clock has been unwinding. The expansion of the universe itself provides more and more space, more and more ways for things to get disordered. Stars form, burn their fuel, and disperse their elements back into the cosmos. Galaxies spread apart. Energy spreads out. This constant one-way process of unwinding is what gives time its direction. The cosmological arrow of time, the expansion of the universe, and the thermodynamic arrow of time, the increase of entropy, point in the same direction. They are two sides of the same cosmic coin. Why the universe began in this special, low-entropy state is perhaps the single biggest unanswered question in all of cosmology. We don't know, but the fact that it did is the ultimate reason for the forward flow of time. Without that pristine, ordered beginning, there would be no unwinding to be done, no journey from order to disorder, and perhaps no meaningful concept of time at all. So, what does this all mean for us, for our consciousness and our daily lives? It means that our personal experience of time is not an illusion. It is deeply and fundamentally tied to the physics of the cosmos. This brings us to the psychological arrow of time. Why do you remember yesterday, but not tomorrow? It's because the very act of forming a memory is an entropy-increasing process. To create a memory, your brain must create new neural connections and store information. This is a process that takes energy. Your body burns calories, chemical reactions occur, and your brain releases a tiny amount of heat into the environment. While a small part of your brain becomes slightly more ordered by storing the memory, the energy you expend to do so creates a much larger amount of disorder in the universe around you. The net result is that overall entropy increases, in perfect agreement with the second law of thermodynamics. Essentially, you can only create a record of an event that has already happened. A memory is an effect, and it must have a cause in the past. You cannot have a memory of the future because no information from the future has been able to cause an effect in your brain right now. The creation of knowledge itself is an irreversible process. Our consciousness, our ability to learn and remember, is surfing the wave of increasing entropy. We are creatures of the arrow. The very flow of thoughts inside your head, the feeling of one moment giving way to the next, is a direct consequence of the universe's grand, irreversible journey. Ultimately, the story of time is the story of the universe. It begins with a moment of unexplained and perfect order. From this single point, a cascade of events unfolds over billions of years, governed by the relentless pull toward disorder. This unfolding is what we call time. The expansion of space, the burning of stars, the evolution of life, and the formation of your own memories are all just different facets of this one, overarching process. We feel time moving forward because we are products of that forward motion. We are complex, ordered structures of matter, temporarily holding out against the cosmic tide of entropy. But we do so at a cost, burning energy and contributing to the universe's overall slide into disorder. Our lives are not separate from this process. They are an intimate part of it. Every breath we take, every decision we make, is another small, irreversible step along the one-way road of cosmic history, a history written by the unwavering arrow of time. But what if this grand, irreversible journey has a destination? If the arrow of time is defined by the universe's relentless slide into disorder, what happens when it finally reaches maximum disorder? The evidence suggests this leads to a state physicists call the heat death of the universe. It's a future so distant it's almost impossible to imagine. Billions upon billions of years from now, all the stars will have burned out, their last light fading into the dark. The galaxies themselves will have flown so far apart they are lost to one another. Over even more immense timescales, the supermassive black holes at their centers will slowly evaporate through a faint whisper of Hawking radiation, returning their locked-up energy to the cosmos. Ultimately, what's left is a vast, cold, and nearly empty expanse, a uniform soup of stray photons and elementary particles, all at a temperature just fractions of a degree above absolute zero. In this state of perfect equilibrium, there are no more ordered structures left to break down. There is no useful energy left to power any process. An acorn can't grow, a star can't ignite, a thought can't form. In a universe of maximum entropy, a shattered glass would never have been whole in the first place. Essentially, the arrow of time would become meaningless. Time's forward march, the very engine of change that gives rise to complexity and consciousness, would grind to a halt because there would be nothing left to change. The story of the universe would be over. So, what does this all mean? It means our existence, and the flow of time we experience, is a fleeting, precious phenomenon. We are living in the vibrant, dynamic era of the universe, the time between the perfectly ordered beginning and the perfectly disordered end. We are complex eddies of order in a cosmic river flowing towards chaos. Our consciousness is not an illusion. It is a temporary feature of a universe that is still complex enough to support it. Every breath, every choice, every memory is a small, irreversible act of participation in this grand, finite story. A story written not just by the arrow of time, but for it. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to continue exploring these profound questions together.